Greetings, fellow tarot travelers, tripping through the tetrahedral triptych of cards I shall lay before you. I'm Tarot Torch, and I want you to know that we're going to discuss a very important topic, North Korea. Before Japan annexed Korea in the 19th century, Korea's profound isolationism caused it to be called the Hermit Kingdom by the West. By the late 19th century, Korea became sought after by the Japanese. At this point in history, underdeveloped nations suffered rapid development through conquest and political upheaval. Despite the Korean Empire's effort to modernize after the First Sino-Japanese War, the Japanese conquered Korea in 1910. Thus, Korea became a client state of Japan, ruled by Imperial Japan until the end of World War II in August of 1945. In 1945, with Japan having chosen the losing side in World War II, the Soviet Union and the United States divvied up Korea as spoils of war. Japanese forces surrendered in Korea in the aftermath of World War II, leaving Korea partitioned by the U.S. and the USSR along the 38th parallel. The North was under Soviet occupation, and the South was under U.S. occupation. The division of Korea by the two superpowers had begun with neither side particularly caring to create terms for Korean independence and unification. The communist-inspired government in the North received backing from the Soviet Union in opposition to the pro-Western government in the South. North Korea officially became the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, and the South Korea officially became known as the Republic of Korea. Tensions between North and South Korea, as well as between the US and USSR, resulted in the outbreak of the Korean War in 1950. China had just turned communist a few months prior in September of 1949, feeding the frenzy of a domino effect rolling across Asia. The Korean War ended in a stalemate in 1953, but without a formalized peace treaty. This status contributes to the high tensions that continues to divide the Korean peninsula. Both governments of the two Koreas claim to be the sole legitimate government of the region, and both have heavy arms aimed at each other. On February 27th and 28th, President Donald Trump and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un will conduct meetings in Hanoi, Vietnam, for their second summit in 8 months. Currently, there is little chance for the regime of Kim Jong-un to eliminate all of its nuclear weapons capability. This meeting being held in a communist country makes it look like Kim is holding the upper hand in these negotiations. There is much bluster from the right-wing media that President Trump is winning in all these negotiations. But words are often far different than actions. Secret nuke development is no stranger in the international political arena, with countries like Iran, Israel, and North Korea maintaining their own secret nuclear arms agenda. Will there be a reprisal of the Korean War? Will North Korea use its nukes? Will the US invade North Korea? Will Russia get involved in a Korean War scenario? Will North Korea use its nukes on other countries like Japan or the US? Will Korea unify? Will any action through negotiations with North Korea have any impact on North Korea's objectives at all? Well, these are some very big questions. And when we have questions that we simply cannot answer on the spot, it's always a good idea to then turn to the tarot. The tarot may not answer these questions, but it always lends an important and unusual insight into the dilemma and offers meaningful counsel in our times of need. Now, I don't personally own a North Korean tarot deck. I'm not sure if one exists. And so what we're going to do today is use a deck that's put out by Il Managhello called Tarocco Napoleonico. And this is made in Milan, Italy. Now, the reason for this particular card deck is because Napoleon, as we all know, who is the emperor in this deck, well, you know, he was a brilliant military leader. He was a brilliant statesman. He really was. He became the emperor of Europe, and that's not an easy accomplishment. But he was put on his own private island to go mad. And when people look back at the medals that he offered people to go fight at the front lines and lose their limbs, it all seems like such madness now. And, you know, this is the type of narcissistic leadership that Kim Jong-un and Donald Trump both seem to exhibit at times. They call it a Napoleon complex. So I thought, well, you know, this deck of cards may be appropriate for today's reading. And so here are the cards. It's a smaller than average deck, and actually, I really like the size of it. It makes it very easy to shuffle and very easy to deal cards and work with. So we then cut the deck. And now let's see what the cards foretell about the summit, about North Korea, North-South Korea interactions, and the potentiality of a world war. The first card is the Valet de Denier, and that is the Page of Coins. Now, the Page of Coins is a very interesting card. You know, it has a lot to do with very simple lessons of economics. It's a very basic card where one learns how cost and money and currency works. The next card is Le Monde. This is the card known in English as the world. And this is the thing that everybody wants to own. And this is the one thing that should never, ever be owned. The third card of the triptych is the Ten of Coins. Oh my gosh, 2 coin cards. And so the Ten of Coins is profound and powerful wealth. Money big enough for it to go intergenerationally, leaving it to your children and your grandchildren and your great-grandchildren and beyond. So these are the 3 cards from where we'll build our fundamental structure and do our analysis. So we can look at this as the past, the present, the future, or just as 3 different aspects speaking to a common problem or situation. The Page of Coins is a higher card than the Ten of Coins. So if we look at this as a progression towards the future, it is considered a descending progression. In fact, it goes from a lower card to the highest card to the lowest card. But because the outcome is the lowest card, only a 10 of coins, it is considered to be an unfavorable outcome. So I would not expect a great peace deal or a great trade deal or great understanding or compassion coming from these meetings between Trump and Kim Jong-un. So the Valet de Denier means that both sides, America and North Korea, and probably Vietnam as well, would like to have more money. Tell me anyone who doesn't want more money. No matter how much money a person or a nation has, there's always room in your pocket for more money. And so what we see here is negotiations about scarce world resources, about forced labor camps, about reducing currencies, and about establishing trade. That's what has been done in most of the discussions in the past. Where the people are at now is in a position where they are vying for world supremacy. Right now, Korea wants to side with Russia and with China and wants to own the world that way. America wants to side with the EU and with Britain, and it wants to own the world that way. And so what we're seeing is a planetary issue, these nuclear wars that could occur. In fact, the wreath being held by the angel could be part of a mushroom cloud. And so the point is that the whole world is concerned and the whole world is at stake. This card can portend a world war. And the 10 of coins means absolutely unabated wealth, unending wealth, so much money you cannot imagine. And, you know, I hate to say it, but this is the kind of configuration where Donald Trump probably calls up Kim Jong-un and says, okay, let's pretend to have a fight in public because it'll scare everybody. And then I can get more money from Congress, you can get more money from your government, and then we can start talking about, you know, getting the franchise burger restaurants in your country and us getting some cheap labor for computer components for our country. I mean, I hate to say it, but that's the kind of schnookering that the valet de dernier is all about as he hooks the deal. The world, however, is not that way. The world card is a noble and important card. And it is one of the few cards you really don't want upside down. The world card, when it is a bad card or next to bad cards, speaks of a world gone crazy. So it is for us to preserve the sanity of the world and not just exploit all of its resources, because that kills the world. And so the problem with the Korean negotiations is, on the one hand, there's the potential of nuclear war, world war, and the complete extinction of our planet. On the other hand, there's the possibility of exploiting the Korean peninsula and taking away every tree and every ounce of gold. And that would destroy a beautiful place. Perhaps the government isn't so good, but the land itself is beautiful. And we don't want to destroy parts of the world. And so, really, the world is at stake in this kind of a configuration. And the outcome is great and prosperous wealth. So I think that all they're talking about is money and how to squeeze each side for what they've got to make arms deals, to make trade deals, and to get slave labor going in Vietnam and North Korea, because the Korean government can repress its people like no other type of government, to steal away people's hard-earned hours and their entire lives, slaving them in factories and working them to death. And you know what? That's ironic, because communist countries are supposed to be governments of the workers. They're workers' states. They're workers' revolutionary countries. They're supposed to all be about the proletariat. And yet, ironically, it's the communist countries that seem to treat their workers the worst. So here we're going to have a look at this outcome in greater detail. We have le chariot, which is the chariot. And as you see in this particular card, it's like a hearse in the old days. Or perhaps it's a car for a general. It's hard to see because we don't see all the details of it. But it is definitely an old-fashioned horse-drawn carriage. I really like the art of these cards. It is quite fantastic. And the other card is the valet de coupe, another page, a page of cups. And so what we see happening in terms of this enormous wealth of the 10 of coins is that there's literally a rush to make North Korea solvent. And there's a rush on slave labor. And there's a rush to get that lithium or get that gold or get that natural gas. And there's a charge to make that money happen. And at the bottom of it, though, is the valet de coupe. Now, the cups are very interesting cards. I mean, if we were looking at this militarily, the page of coins would be a land invasion, and the page of cups would be a sea invasion. And the chariot could easily be stealth bombers. Okay? So, I mean, this actually could be interpreted as a military confrontation. But the 10 of coins here, I mean, that would have to be massive, massive bombing. Oh my God, this would be the kind of bombing that would make the shock and awe of Iraq look like, 4th of July fireworks. This would be, the 10 of coins would be so many bombs dropping from the sky you couldn't even see the clouds. So let's hope that's not the interpretation of these cards. Instead, let's hope the Page of Cups is offering forgiveness and peace, and that the Valet of Coins is offering money and trade deals, and that the Chariot is offering financial restructuring of North Korea and even Vietnam to make them economically solvent and players in the world economy on a better level and footing than they ever have by utilizing the vast wealth and resources of the world, which is totally available in order to make and sustain peace. If we're going to use the money of the world, we ought to at least do it to spare the world and bring peace on earth. And what's interesting about this spread is we have two pages. They're not a king or a queen. There's no aces. So these are not terrifically high cards. Yes, they're higher than a 10, but they're not terrifically high cards. The pages are usually considered untrained and uneducated in their art. And we have only two higher arcana cards. And of the two, there is the charge and the urgency and the desire to be seen as a political leader and the desire to be seen as the great hero who saves the day, whether it's Trump or Un. Both sides want to wear this laurel wreath crown as the victor of the talks, as the saver of the planet. But in fact, all that's really concerned about is money. But to see only lower court cards and two higher arcana cards, but only one of which has enormous importance, is a very high number, a 21 versus a 7, I would say that these meetings are just paperwork shuffling. I'd say they're not really going anywhere. And if there is a real threat, it's not going to really be addressed. And that the consideration here is for world peace, for world trade, for a world economic order, and for world peace. It's no doubt that's what's here, because the Page of Cups brings peace and the Page of Coins brings trade. But it's the sanity of the world. It's the sane and reverent lives of the people that compose the world that makes the world what it is. And I think that somehow, some way, even though only lower concerns are being addressed, somehow it is the world that is leading these discussions. It is the world that is the focus of these discussions, and it is the world that is the victor of these discussions.